thank you for your patience. We're starting a little late due to a prior meeting. It is Tuesday, December 17th at 6:09 p.m. and I'd like to call the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union Board of Directors meeting to order. First on the agenda are public comments. Any public comments? Okay, hearing none. The main reason for our meeting tonight, SVSU fiscal year 26 budget review.
Not ready to go from one meeting to another. Clearly, I didn't hand out what I was supposed to hand out to the other board. Whoops. Let's try this. So I did not make any adjustments because we kind of left the last meeting that we were going to wait and see what the assessments looked like in the local budgets before making any kind of moves. This is essentially just the same budget again with an updated assessment. Cindy, would you like it? I would love it. Thank you. No apologies, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna get out of SVSU and back into SVSU.
So we're able to see what it looks like here. Yes.
Yes, same budget as I presented last week. At the 8.3% increase. So our last meeting, I had gone through and kind of scaled back some vacant positions to lower points on the pay scale. I had removed budgets for benefit elections for folks either they were vacant positions and a couple of the newly requested positions. I pulled some funding out of there, also made some adjustments just based on prior year spending, for about $600,000 out of the last budget. I did get an updated, actually I should call it version 2 of long-term weighted AVM at late last night at about 9:30. So I went through and updated the assessment summary that is posted online with tonight's agenda, and it basically is just a replacement of that page in the packet. So basically you have the same packet from last week, just with an updated assessment, and then I'll get into just a little bit more of the change in just a moment. So across the SU, all of our numbers ended up decreasing, and we kind of anticipated that because in meetings with the Agency of Education, as they were reviewing the data and hearing from data managers, they realized that they had inadvertently counted some students' head count versus average daily membership. So when they switched it back to the way that it's supposed to be, that's the numbers ended up ticking down. So on the big piece of paper, that is that I could have folded, that is the assessment sheet with the proportions, how each of those buckets gets assessed out. And then kind of below that polka dotted section is the updated version 2 preliminary long-term weighted average daily membership for FY26. we went down almost 200 weighted ADM, which was shared pretty much amongst all boards. I think average was about 3%, the decreases in ADM.
So,
Arlington went down 3.18%, Sandgate 2.74%. SVUESD went down 2.28%, MAU 3.8%, and North Bennington 1.96%. So by updating those numbers, it slightly shifted all the percentages above, which then shifted the or the assessments in the upper portion. So I went through each of the budgets today and updated the assessments. So that's why things looked a little bit different for SVUESD than what had been put in their packet, because that was left over from last week. What you saw last week in terms of the assessment sheet, the numbers have shifted slightly, but when you look at the overall total, the budget remains 37,153,179. But the allocations to the districts have just been adjusted based on those proportions.
so that means that the count, the count of students served has gone down. Costs remain the same, so you're essentially your per pupil cost has gone up
Correct.
because the costs remain the same.
The other thing that I updated in the packet was I went back through, so what I just handed out, so this would be the third page, which is also a longer page, slightly folded, with the assessment comparison. So what I had in the previous packet was just comparing FY 25 to FY 26 draft 2 budget by district and kind of combining things by category. I went back and added FY 24. What else did I update? So you scroll down kind of to the bottom. By district, you've got our long-term weighted average daily membership in the FY 25 column, the current version of long-term weighted average daily membership, which is preliminary version 2 for FY 26, and then the assessment by long-term weighted ADM across the board for each of member districts. I think that's one thing that the board had asked for. And I have one more thing that didn't make it into the packet because I started working on it once I saw Richard's notes this afternoon or this morning. That is what I'm going to share right now. I've already sent this to Amy for posting website. Out. There were, yep. When we look at the budget, the way that I have it presented, we're always looking at 3 prior years of actual expenses, and then the current year budget with the following year's proposed budget. So we're not necessarily looking at apples to apples. So the first line of what I just handed out is an apples to apples comparison of the budget. So FY 22, the approved budget was 29.6 million. FY 23, it was 30.3 million, so an increase of 2.3. And FY 24, The approved budget ended up being 31.3, so that was a 3.3% increase over the prior year. Last year was 34 point almost 3, and that was a 9.3% increase over the prior year. And then this year's current budget that you have before you is 37.1, or an 8.3% increase. So I think when we were looking at it, it looked like when you were comparing either FY 22 or 23, like the span was almost like a 50% increase. It's actually about half of that when you look at apples to apples. And then looking at the 3 years prior of actual expenditures, just have that in the section below. So FY 22 to FY 23, the budget increased 2.3%, our spending increased 2.1%. Quite a bit of difference in FY 24, the budget increased 3.3%, but our spending went up 8.1. So we did not overspend. Clearly still had surplus funds available, but the spending was definitely trending upward. And then I think another little bit of information that was requested was just what's happening with our students. So I figured the easiest, probably most representative way to look at it would be average daily membership. Because that's files that we get and we see that data kind of used in several different streams throughout the year. So FY 22, and the reason I started with FY 22, you notice my little asterisk down here, is that was the first year that Arlington and Sandgate school districts were part of the SVSU. So that was why I picked that as a starting point for these comparisons. So at that point, we were working with equalized pupils. So in FY 22, that weighted student count, the average daily membership, which is always a 2-year average. So just over 3,500. And then the following year, that 2-year average dropped to 3,446. And then the following year, it drops to 3,389. FY 25, it drops to 3,339. And now the 2-year at ADM average that we're in right now is down to 3,253. So as we, everybody's been saying across the state, like our student enrollment is dropping. So average daily membership is just the 2-year average of the students that are in their seats between days 11 and 30 of school. So it's that 20-day census window. And then I just included, what the differences are between each of the years, the percentage changes. And then interestingly, the weighted pupils have also trended downward. Clearly you can see when we made the shift here to long-term weighted ADM, but everything's been going down until this year. Notice, even though our ADM is down, the weighted pupils actually have ticked up. So that's showing that those weights, we have greater need. So even though the student numbers are declining, the need is going the other way. It could also be, English language learners. It could also be, sparsity.
Need is, right,
Yeah. So just based on the new weighting factors.
right.
So that is all the data that I have for you. Again, no changes to the budget from the last draft. I figured we'd probably just have more of a conversation.
I think you went through this, but for total, I see total budgeted expenditures for fiscal year 25, we have 34,298,000. Where do we project that coming in?
So hard to say right now. I mean, the only thing that would be encumbered right now, if I were to pull an expenditure, and well, when you can look at your budget staff report,
Sure.
any given month. The encumbrances would include our salaries and benefits, any contracts that we have in place that actually have a purchase order in place, and then anything else that actually has a purchase order in place, and then our year-to-date expenses. So anything that hasn't actually been plan, we haven't signed a contract. There could be a lot of money showing still available in
Yep.
that available balance column, but that's because things may not be happening until March or
Yep.
May, you know? So at this point, it's really tough to say, but in just looking at staffing, and because of the vacancies that we've had, there's probably $1 million in student services, SVU, ESD, and $1 million. Last time I looked at it at the NAU level. That's why I went through and
So we could be looking at what is listed here at 34 being 32
lower.
or lower.
But isn't part of that, part of, where you're holding some of the money for help that you thought you might need, that you have backed away from in this budget?
Different spot.
We expense that every year because it's leaving.
Okay,
And that money sits there because I never know from year to year how much is actually gonna be there or not. So it's definitely an asset of the supervisory union, but it's not factored in as fund balance or money coming back in.
So total budgeted expenditures. To look at it kind of apples to apples, we could be very, very close from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25. Barring anything completely unforeseen that you.
that doesn't make sense.
In terms
Fiscal year
of,
25 isn't done yet.
I
So
would
this
say-
34 is gonna could be 32 or less, as Renee just said.
it'll definitely. Would I bet my mortgage on it? I don't, yeah, probably. I would say we're gonna be over that $27 million mark of the actual expenditures for FY 24.
Yep.
Just because of the salary increases that were given to everybody in FY 25.
Okay, but
You mean 25?
Yeah, let me share, just
24,
to make sure we're all talking about the same thing here.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I want to make sure it's the right. Because we have an actual in 24.
Correct. So Scott, were you talking about what the potential is on?
well, I was seeing the total budgeted expenditures up top. It's 34,298.
Mhm.
And I was saying, okay, we're in that year. What's it actually looking or feeling like? And if you were to, and so you said 2 million is sitting in an account that so far we haven't used because we haven't hired the people. Then take that back to 32. Which is higher, yes, than where we were at with total expenditures of 27, but not really far off from what the budgeted expenditures were in fiscal year 24.
From this number here.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but comparing it to actual apples, it's roughly 4 billion higher than the actual expenditures.
Yeah, I mean, that was a point that's been made, and I think really valuable to bring up is you have a perfect storm of 2 years. And that you have last year where we were coming out of a lot of COVID expense, federal money going away. And then you're immediately following it with, and we all knew this was coming. It should not be a surprise to any one of us, but collective bargaining came due, and the insurance part of things, which we have very little control. Yeah, I mean, it's just you. It would be impossible to look at it, but a prudent question would be, what does it look like for the next budget cycle? Because we're going to be budgeting off of what is currently in whatever this current number is, and we shouldn't see another 9. We won't see another collective bargaining agreement. We know what that is.
We will be estimating that unless whoever is on the negotiating committee gets to work really fast and settles really fast. We won't know for FY 27.
Oh, is that coming due again in FY 27?
Right, so I've used the numbers that we know for FY 26, but that's as far as the agreements go. Is through June 30th of 26. So a new contract would be starting July 1 of 26, essentially FY 27.
I feel like there's still a lot of unknowns. Like I feel like there are a lot of big numbers out there and I don't have a good grasp on them
Mhm.
yet, which is why, Scott, I'm asking for the enrollment, K to 12, triple E versus the, daycare providers, because they're just not apples and apples, and I just don't feel I have the knowledge to understand this as certainly never as well as you do, Renee, but I would like to have a better understanding of it than I feel I do right now.
It's an interesting question because really the only numbers that matter in processes are the weighted, which we have in front of us.
Renee was so kind to give us this planning, FTE counts way back last meeting.
Yep.
And yet I'm just hoping to compare them, just to look, so I get a better feel for what we're doing.
As far as,
So you want
those
to
are
see
employees.
student,
I'd like to see this is an old one from
Mhm.
last year that I dug up. But it doesn't include pre-K or K of what's included in this package. Because not every, I think, I could be wrong, not every pre-K program is part of this, is it?
anyone that's a partner. Yes.
Anyone who's a partner is a part of that.
So if we're paying tuition for a student to be going to a partner program, yes, it's definitely included in there.
And it's that 10 hours a week, 35 weeks. Got it.
And we did pull back on that budget. We've budgeted for fewer seats because Megan did say that they are seeing a decline in birth rates. So they're anticipating a decline in enrollments in pre-K. So we scaled back on that, but then also in that draft 2, I did have the new tuition amount, which was up just about $100. I think it was maybe $4 less than what I had in draft 1. So
okay, so the agenda tonight says action requested. I think I'd like to ask members of the board, we're at a place where, we trust the process, trust the information that has been given to us, may have questions, may want more information. But, at some point, we have to be able to move this process forward to allow the other boards to do what they need to do for their respective budgets. So would the board like to call a vote tonight to vote on what's been presented to us so that we can move the process forward, or are there more questions? Too many unanswered questions. And Jeff and Nicole, I know you're online, so I want to make sure that you interject as well, but to make it so you don't want to move forward with that, or does somebody want to call a vote?
and you should be able to unmute yourselves. I don't have it locked down.
No, I think it's willing to just, call for the vote now. I mean, I think looking at the big drivers, it's salary and health insurance. I think we moved this budget this year personally, and then we really should spend some time after we move this budget, looking at what positions we may in the future need to really reduce. Because, we're coming off of another 11% increase in health insurance cost, and we're coming off of our contract negotiation. But I think moving forward, we have to really start thinking about how to reduce some of these positions. And, you can't do it now, but I think, looking next year, we can walk into next fall saying, this is what we need to start considering.
With a 10% increase last year and another 8%, that's 18% in 2 years. I just don't feel I have a good understanding of the nuts and bolts, I guess. And so that's why I was asking for the enrollment specifically to just get a better feel for it. And since we don't have to warn this until the end of January,
No.
no?
Oh, no, we have to warn this
What
for
is-
long before that.
Oh. Okay.
And just to be fair, last year was not actually 10%. We came in at 8 point.
The budget itself was a 9.3 overall. But salaries went up this year.
Yeah, it's salaries and health insurance, killed us this year.
And health insurance is up 16% this year.
Which the only thing that we can do to come to counter that is make substantial cuts to things that I don't feel comfortable doing in on short notice.
Well, the only other things we have staff, right? Or transportation, like we know how many buses we have to run. So, I mean, those are the other things that are in here. I mean, we can cut supplies. I've kind of, scaled those back.
Yeah. That those are all small potatoes. I mean, we're looking at salaries and health insurance at 26 million. I mean, unless you have 10 positions we can cut right now, I think we really should dive into this after, this year and say, look, what do we really need? How do we consolidate, different, if we look at student numbers, we can't say we're going to cut 10 teachers this year because we don't know where they're going to go or where we need it. I mean, it's going to take a lot of time to say, what don't we need?
And I would never want to go right to that teacher line ever.
No.
And so as I am asking for time to just look at the whole picture, what I'm wondering is maybe isn't in the schools, maybe it's something that's supporting of someplace else that I don't know. Because I'm just
Nicole,
looking at
oops,
this.
sorry. Nicole, do you have any thoughts?
Um, it's such a complex budget, and with the numbers looking at the weighted ADM, and I translate that into need, and we've got that demonstrates an increasing need in our students that are being served within our SU. So to to the point being made, I don't think anybody here assembled in this group could say that we could do without teachers, direct student support services, because we have administrators who are saying these are the services that are needed and this is the headcount that is needed to provide the services for the students that are in our SU. Do we have administrative positions? Do we have other positions? I don't know how much those other positions would impact the total, because the largest percentage, I believe, and maybe this is a question, the largest percentage of our staff budget is for those directly supporting students.
On the wonderful handout that we had last time, we have a total local admin FTEs of 42. And the student piece is broken out by the different levels, so it's a little bit different. 92 for MAU, the ESD 111, and then a K to 12, which is 25.6, which I'm not exactly sure, Renee, what that meant.
Yeah, I can pull it up and share so everybody can.
But I would say you're right, Nicole, the largest expense are those that are supporting students.
So this was, it's still in the packet. Sorry, I don't know what the page number is.
18.
18. So the first column, administration, that is mainly give or take, what I consider general fund. So it's the central office, but then also the ancillary kind of, we call it the red building up in Arlington, which is where the bus drivers are, because the transportation is considered part of our general fund. And tech. The early education programs, that is just supporting the pre-K programs of SVU, ESD, and North Bennington, but it's encompassing of special education for Arlington and Sandgate as well. So let that sink in again. So it's pre-K for SVU, ESD, and North Bennington, but the special education component of pre-K, all member districts. And that's because Arlington keeps their pre-K cost, their local level. So they have $500,000 in their local budget for their pre-K classrooms that are in Fisher. And then they have students tuitioning in from Sunderland and Sandgate. And then the bottom portion of this document is student services, also known as special education. So K to 12 is Arlington and Sandgate, ASD, SSD. K to 5-6, that's SVU, ESD, and North Bennington. And then grades 6 to 7 through 12 would be Mount Anthony. And those are the FTEs for each of those. So yes, the overall bulk, 111.88 FTE. Just for the elementary district student services, 92.35 for Mount Anthony. And Arlington and Sandgate would be 25.6 FTEs for student services. Compared to the 26.45 for early ed and 42.1 admin. And that really does encompass a wide variety. These are all of our technicians, even better, out in schools too.
Okay, so I think I heard Jeff make a motion.
Yeah, I'll make it official. I'll make the motion. We move this budget as is.
As proposed here, which
As
is
proposed tonight. Yep.
$37,153,179. Do we have a second?
I will second.
So a motion by Jeff and a second by Nicole. Any further discussion?
No, man.
Yes.
The only thing I'd like to say is I think after, if we move this budget, we spend some time this spring to really look at, non-student direct services we can consider to consolidate. I think it's time to start looking there.
I think that's a worthy request and charge, and I think there'll be a time of new beginning coming this spring with new staffing, a new perspective coming into the SU, and I think that will be a good time for us to collectively have a look at that, us along with the administration that will be in place.
Well, and I will also say we've started this conversation. Scott, you had brought up, we were going to work on a strategic plan. Do we have the right governance structure in place? Do we have the right, administrative structure in place to support the supervisory union? Where can we consolidate? Where can we gain efficiencies? We had started that conversation and had reached out to engage the VSBA to assist us in that process and hiring a consultant to come in and begin that work. And then we had to pivot to a superintendent search. So all of that work that we had talked about that needed to be done still needs to be done. We need to look deeply at our SU structure. Everything from how our districts are structured, how our school boards are structured, how the SU administration is structured. I think we've all sat in meetings and have agreed that needed to be a priority. had to shift our priority to hiring a superintendent.
I'll do a yes, and, I mean, you all were present when, when I expressed my feelings several months back, but, the person who is helping us from the VSBA with our superintendent search, has also said that has been identified as the likely person who will help us with that strategic work when we're at that place where we can do that after we exhaust the superintendent search. So I feel better about this and our ability to not be mired in details, but actually impart change than I did several months back. And so I feel like this is the last step of perhaps the old way, and then collectively we're going to move forward in a new direction, starting next budget cycle.
And I certainly understand that and respect that, and I feel it's difficult that we're going to say to our new superintendent, welcome, now cut the budget.
That's not necessarily what we're going to say.
True, okay.
It's not what the mandate is.
That's what Sandy said.
That's what Sandy might say.
Yes.
Assess would be a better word. Assess the budget with us.
Assess the structure,
Yeah.
which is what we've talked about.
Right,
And
that would all be part of that work, I think,
yeah,
because we could talk about how we deliver things in terms of services to students.
Well, before that superintendent walked in, I would much rather, I would feel more comfortable handing him something, or her, with a percent closer to our inflation rate, or maybe even to 7% instead of 8.3 to
I think what I'm excited to hand the new administrator coming in is a group of people who are willing to engage in the conversation, because that will be the most exciting thing. I think any person walking into this district in this role would want to have.
And realistically, this budget is a little more inflated. I think Renee said, like, we're nowhere gonna get money back at the end of the year, end of the day. I'd rather, say, instead of being so tight now, and then 2 years down the road, we realize we don't get any kickback, but we have another 13% increase in health insurance, and we do have another teaching contract coming up. So think about that long term.
Jeff, I wouldn't say that it's inflated. I would say
No.
that if we were to have
Well,
every
please have to.
position
Every
filled
filled.
for the whole year,
Yes.
then we would be spending a lot more money.
That
Yes.
being said, Jeff, I agree, and that's why I find it difficult to have 9 point something last year and 8 point something this year and possibly another high percentage next year. And so I'm just asking that we slow it up a little bit and try to,
But the collective bargaining is set, like it's 9% next
the
year.
budget, just try
Period.
to increase, but.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
I do have a question which I should have asked prior. It doesn't really concern anybody else. It concerns SVU ESD as well as North Bennington. That's the triple E for our two districts. Remember, we had a discussion about that those numbers should be proportional to the students in that program. And I just didn't confirm that this year, so I'm looking at this number for North Bennington. Or do we have students that amount to 9.35% of that population in triple E? At least in terms of what we foresee happening next year.
So the numbers have been updated from the first draft. The new Ed5 system is still dumping all of the students into the pre-K column. So they're not breaking them out, but they're now all counted. So we went up over 100 students between pre-K and triple E. There was an issue with that in the first draft.
Yeah.
And I think I had Amy
Yep.
post that today too. Yeah, let me pull that up. Here it is. This is with the packet as well. So those pre-K counts were
Oh, I can
significantly lower.
Okay.
Okay, let me go a little bit bigger.
Thanks.
It's over 300 and it was
Was lower than that. Quite a bit.
significantly lower.
But I'm actually asking about just the triple E part of it, which is a much smaller number.
Yeah, and I don't have that because the data is combined with
Okay.
A. Until they can break it out for me, it would adjust those numbers. But basically what you're seeing is an average of FY 20, FY
Yeah,
21.
2 years prior.
Yeah, so I've got last year's numbers, but then this year's numbers are all included in the pre-K column. So I think our head count
Yeah,
was
that's
correct,
right.
it's just not right bucket.
Okay, well, I'm going
And
to
I know-
work those numbers. That's not gonna deter me from voting on the budget, but I needed to get that out too. I should have asked that. Oh, you had said that those numbers were not accurate yet, and I understand that.
Nicole, you were about to say?
I was gonna say, I know that what we look at is the percentage increase in the budget, which makes sense. That's what we're making a decision on. But I appreciate Renee's data that she has presented that shows the consistent kind of underspending trends that we're having and how that difference factors into the reality of what the member districts are actually assessed. And so it's very easy to focus on the 8.3%, which is legitimate. It's a significant increase. But as we have seen trends with $2 to $4 million underspending, the picture of the actuals is quite different. And we've talked about whether or not you pull that back to a budget that reflects more of your actuals, but then you get those positions filled, or you get a significant change in student count, and now you're overspending your budget, and that's a much harder story to go back to our taxpayers with. Is we pulled our budget back to the point that now we are spending more than what you had approved.
So which year have we done that, Renee, since you've been overseeing this budgets? How many years have we overspent?
We haven't, because we continue to budget for the positions. But we've seen, and that's, I think I included that in the last packet too, like what the trend in vacancies have been.
Sure.
And that's what's driving, those, and I kind of tried to break it out in one of the sheets too, of where are we seeing the surplus coming from? And I did it for 20, I think it was 23 spending. And then 24, so, looking at the budget of 24, the actual spending of 24. See, a good chunk of it tends to be in staffing.
So we're budgeting for things that we will not spend.
We're budgeting
it
for
feels like
staff that we can't fill positions for. But we're coming out of that trend now. I mean, COVID kind of exacerbated like everybody exiting the education system, but they're actually seeing people applying for positions now, qualified people applying for positions.
And then the other hand is just what Nicole said, you know, if we don't do this, then we're underfunding ourselves and needing to overspend based on need.
I guess that's why I wanted to see where we are in the numbers, and that's why I had asked for them, so I have a better sense, a better feel.
I asked for them too, and I didn't get them, so
I just would feel better knowing.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
I,
Those opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Next on the agenda is motion to adjourn.
I make that move.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Uh,
I.
Those opposed? Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thanks, Scott.
And then,